The music hit me first, a pulsing beat of laughter and clinking glasses that spilled from the backyard into the quiet street. I stood frozen at the gate, my hand hovering over the latch, wondering if I'd made a colossal mistake. "Ethan, you idiot," I thought. "You don't belong here." I'd never been to a gathering like this. My best friend, Jamie, had invited me to their family's annual rainbow reunion in their hometown just outside Seattle. Jamie, who came out as non-binary 2 years ago, had been buzzing about this event for weeks, their eyes lighting up every time they mentioned their chosen family. I'd nodded along, supportive but clueless, assuming it was just another barbecue. Now, standing at the edge of their world, I felt like an outsider staring into a kaleidoscope of color and connection I didn't understand. The gate creaked as I pushed it open, and Jamie spotted me instantly. "Ethan," they called, weaving through a crowd of people with a grin that could melt glaciers. They wore a vibrant jacket covered in patches, rainbows, stars, and slogans I couldn't quite read. At 30, Jamie had this effortless way of making everyone feel seen. And right now, their focus was all on me. "You made it. Come on. You're gonna love this." I forced a smile, my stomach twisting. I'm 28, straight, and from a small town where different meant a new brand of beer at the local bar. Growing up, I'd heard the whispers about people like Jamie, words laced with judgment, words I never challenged because they weren't about me. But Jamie was my friend, the one who'd stayed up with me through heartbreak and job losses, the one who'd made me laugh until I couldn't breathe. So when they invited me to this, I said yes, thinking it'd be no big deal. Now, surrounded by their family, biological and chosen, I wasn't so sure. The backyard was alive. String lights crisscrossed above, casting a warm glow over tables piled with food, homemade mac and cheese, grilled veggies, and a cake shaped like a rainbow. People of all ages and styles mingled, some in glittery outfits, others in jeans and flannel, all radiating a kind of ease I envied. A woman with a buzz cut and a leather jacket was deep in conversation with an older man in a cardigan. 2 teenagers were giggling over a phone, their nail polish glinting in the light. I felt like I'd stepped into a world where everyone knew the rules except me. Jamie tugged me toward a group near the fire pit. "This is Ethan," they announced, their arm around my shoulder. "My straight ally, here to witness the chaos." The group laughed, and I felt my face heat up. Ally? I hadn't earned that. I was just here because Jamie asked. A woman in her 40s with warm brown eyes extended her hand. "I'm Carla, Jamie's aunt. Welcome to the madness." Her smile was genuine, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched, judged for being the odd one out. I mumbled a hello, my voice barely audible over the music. As the night went on, I stuck close to Jamie, letting their energy carry me. They introduced me to cousins, friends, and partners, each with a story that felt bigger than the small talk I was used to. There was Leo, a trans man who'd left his conservative family to start over in Seattle, his laugh loud and unapologetic. And Sarah, a lesbian poet whose wife, Mia, kept stealing fries off her plate with a mischievous grin. Everyone seemed so free. It was disorienting, like I'd been living in black and white and stumbled into Technicolor. But then I saw him across the yard, leaning against a tree, a guy about my age with dark curls and a quiet intensity. He wasn't loud like the others, but his presence pulled at me. Our eyes met for a split second, and he looked away, sipping his drink. Something about him felt familiar, like a memory I couldn't place. "Hey, who's that?" I asked Jamie, nodding toward him. They followed my gaze and smirked. "That's Alex. He's complicated. Want me to introduce you?" I shook my head too quickly. "Nah, just curious." But my eyes kept drifting back to him, and I couldn't figure out why. As the night deepened, the story started. People gathered around the fire pit, sharing memories of their journeys coming out, finding love, losing it, fighting for it. I listened, half expecting to feel like an intruder, but their words pulled me in. Carla spoke about adopting Jamie when their parents couldn't accept them. Leo talked about the first time he felt like himself, standing in front of a mirror after top surgery. Each story was raw, real, and heavy with truth. I didn't notice Alex join the circle until he spoke. His voice was low, steady, but it carried a weight that silenced the group. I lost someone, he said, staring into the fire. Someone I loved. And I'm still figuring out how to live with that. The air shifted. Jamie squeezed my arm, their eyes soft with understanding. I wanted to ask more, but something told me to stay quiet. Alex's story wasn't for minute yet. By the time I left that night, my head was spinning. I'd come expecting a party, but I'd found something else, a glimpse into lives I'd never understood. Lives that were messy and beautiful and fiercely human. As I drove home, Alex's face lingered in my mind, along with a question I couldn't shake. What was I missing in my own life? The next morning, I woke up with the gathering still buzzing in my head. Jamie's text lit up my phone. So, what did you think? Ready for round 2? I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Round 2. I wasn't sure I'd survived round 1. I met Jamie for coffee at a small shop in Capitol Hill. The kind of place with pride flags in the window and baristas who knew everyone's name. Jamie was already there, sipping a latte, their colorful scarf a stark contrast to my plain gray hoodie. You look like you saw a ghost last night, they teased, sliding a coffee toward me. Not a ghost, I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Just a lot. Your family's intense. They're not all blood family, Jamie said, their voice softening. Most of them are chosen. People who showed up when the world didn't. They leaned forward, studying me. You okay? You seemed kind of quiet by the end. I shrugged, but the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about Alex. His words by the fire pit had stuck with me, like a song I couldn't unhear. I wanted to ask about him, but the words felt clumsy, like I was prying into something private. Instead, I said, it was just different. I'm not used to people being so open. Jamie's eyes twinkled. That's the point. No masks. Just us. They paused, then added, you should come to the art walk tonight. Some of the crew will be there, including Mr. Mysterious by the tree. My face flushed, and I busied myself with my coffee. Who said I was curious about him? Your eyes did, Jamie said, laughing. Come on, Ethan. Live a little. That night, I found myself at the art walk, a maze of galleries and street vendors under Seattle's neon glow. Jamie dragged me from booth to booth, introducing me to artists whose work ranged from abstract paintings to sculptures made of recycled metal. The energy was electric, but I kept scanning the crowd for Alex, half hoping, half dreading I'd see him. And then, there he was standing in front of a painting of a stormy sea, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. He was 29, I'd learned from Jamie, with a quiet strength that made him stand out even in a crowd. I took a deep breath and walked over, my heart pounding like I was 16 again. Hey, I said, cringing at how lame it sounded. I'm Ethan. From last night. He turned, his dark eyes meeting mine. Alex, he said, his voice softer than I expected. I remember. We stood there, awkward for a moment, the painting's blues and grays swirling behind us. This one's yours, I asked, nodding at the canvas. He nodded. Yeah. It's personal. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't push. Instead, we started talking about art, about Seattle, about nothing and everything. He had a way of listening, really listening, that made me feel like I was the only person in the room. As we moved through the galleries, I noticed how people gravitated toward him. Not because he was loud or flashy, but because he was real. He didn't hide his scars, and I envied that. I'd spent my life playing it safe, sticking to the script my small-town upbringing had written for me. Alex was different. He'd lived through something loss, maybe, or betrayal, and it had shaped him, but it hadn't broken him. By the end of the night, we'd exchanged numbers, and I felt a spark I couldn't explain. It wasn't just attraction, though there was that too. It was like he'd cracked open a door in my mind, one I hadn't known was there. Over the next few weeks, Alex and I started hanging out. Coffee dates turned into long walks by the waterfront, where we'd talk about everything from our favorite books to the things that kept us up at night. He told me about growing up in a strict household, where being gay wasn't just frowned upon, it was forbidden. He'd left at 18, built a life in Seattle, and found a community that loved him for who he was. But there was a shadow in his stories, a name he never mentioned but carried in his eyes. One night, over beers at a quiet bar, he finally opened up. His name was Ryan, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We were together for 3 years. He died in a car accident 2 years ago. The words hit me like a punch. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened as he talked about Ryan, the way he laughed, the way he'd made Alex feel alive. I saw the pain in his eyes, but also the love, and it stirred something in me. I'd never lost someone like that, but I'd also never loved someone like that. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. He looked at me, his gaze steady. Thanks. It's why I don't let people in easily. But you're different, Ethan. I don't know why, but you are. My heart raced, and I felt the weight of his words. Different. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I wanted to find out. As weeks turned into months, Alex became a constant in my life. We'd meet up after work, wander through Pike Place Market, or just sit in his tiny apartment, sketching and talking. His place was a reflection of him, walls covered in art, shelves stuffed with books, and a warmth that made you want to stay. I started to notice things about myself I'd never questioned before. The way my pulse quickened when he smiled. The way I wanted to be near him, even when we weren't saying anything. Jamie noticed too. You're falling for him, aren't you? They said one day, their tone half teasing, half serious. I nearly choked on my sandwich. What? No. We're just friends. Uh-huh, Jamie said, smirking. Keep telling yourself that. Their words haunted me. I'd always thought of myself as straight, but Alex was making me question everything. It wasn't just about him, it was the way his world challenged mine. The Rainbow Reunion had opened my eyes to a community built on love and resilience. And now, with Alex, I was starting to see myself differently too. One evening, we went to a drag show at a club downtown. The place was packed, the air electric with cheers and music. Alex was in his element, cheering for a performer named Ruby who strutted across the stage in a glittering gown. I watched him. His face lit up with joy, and felt a pull I couldn't ignore. After the show, we walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflecting on the water. You're quiet tonight, Alex said, nudging my shoulder. Just thinking, I said, my voice tight. I wanted to tell him how I felt, but the words stuck in my throat. What if I was wrong? What if I was just confused? He stopped walking and turned to face me. Ethan, what's going on? You've been weird all week. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. I don't know how to say this. I'm not. I stopped, frustrated. I think I'm falling for you. The words hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Alex's eyes widened, but he didn't pull away. "Ethan," he said softly, "are you sure?" "No," I admitted, my voice shaking. "But I know I've never felt like this before. And it scares the hell out of me." He stepped closer, his hand brushing mine. "It's okay to be scared. I am too." That night, under the glow of the city, he kissed me. It was soft, tentative, like we were both testing the waters. And in that moment, everything clicked. I wasn't just falling for Alexei, was falling into a truth I'd been running from my whole life. But the world wasn't as kind as that moment. The next day, I got a call from my mom. "Ethan, what's this I hear about you hanging out with those people?" Her voice was sharp, laced with the same judgment I'd grown up hearing. "Those people?" I snapped, my anger flaring. "They're my friends, Mom. And they're better than most of the people back home." She went silent, then said, "I just don't want you getting mixed up in something you'll regret." Her words cut deep, stirring up old doubts. I'd spent my life trying to fit into the mold my family expected: straight, stable, predictable. Now, I was breaking that mold, and it felt like betraying them. But walking away from Alex felt like betraying myself. I told Alex about the call that night. He listened, his face calm but his eyes stormy. "You don't have to choose between me and your family," he said. "But you do have to choose who you want to be." His words hit hard. I'd been coasting through life, avoiding the big questions. Now, they were staring me in the face, and I couldn't look away. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Alex and I were together now, officially, though we hadn't put a label on it. We didn't need to. It was in the way he'd grab my hand when we walked, the way we'd laugh over stupid jokes, the way he'd look at me like I was enough. But the doubts lingered, gnawing at me when I was alone. My family wasn't helping. My dad called next, his tone gruff. "Your mom's worried. Ethan, this isn't you." I wanted to scream that this was me, maybe the truest version I'd ever been. But I just hung up. Their disapproval felt like a wall, and I wasn't sure I could climb it. Jamie, as always, was my anchor. We met up at their place, a cozy apartment filled with plants and art. "You're allowed to be happy. You know," they said, handing me a beer. "Your family might come around, or they might not. But you can't live for them." "I know," I said, but it didn't feel that simple. I'd always been the good son, the one who followed the rules. Now, I was rewriting them, and it was terrifying. Alex was patient, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He'd been through too much to dive into something uncertain. One night, as we sat on his couch, he said, "I need to know you're in this, Ethan. Not halfway. Not 1 foot out the door." "I'm in," I said, but my voice wavered. He deserved better than my uncertainty, but I didn't know how to give it to him. Things came to a head at the next Rainbow Reunion event, a fundraiser for a local LGBTQ youth center. The backyard was packed again, this time with more faces I recognized. Carla hugged me like I was family, and Leo clapped me on the back, joking about my glow-up since I'd started hanging out with Alex. But the warmth of the gathering couldn't drown out the tension in my chest. Alex was helping with the art auction, his paintings raising money for kids like he'd once been. I watched him from across the yard, pride swelling in my chest. He was so much more than I'd realized that first night a survivor, an artist, a man who'd built a life out of courage. But then I saw my brother, Mark, standing at the gate. My heart stopped. He wasn't supposed to be here. I hadn't told my family about the event, but Mark lived nearby, and somehow, he'd found out. "Ethan," he called, his voice cutting through the crowd. Heads turned, and I felt Alex's eyes on me. Mark's face was hard, his arms crossed. We need to talk. Now. I walked over, my stomach churning. What are you doing here? Mom told me you're involved with someone, he said, spitting the word like it was poison. Is it true? Are you one of them now? The words hit like a slap. I glanced back at Alex, who was watching, his expression unreadable. The crowd was starting to notice, and I felt trapped between two worlds. Mark, this isn't the place, I said, my voice low. No, it's exactly the place, he snapped. You're throwing away everything for this. For him. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that this wasn't about throwing anything away, it was about finding something real. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood there, frozen, as Mark shook his head and walked away. Alex was by my side in an instant. You okay? He asked, his hand on my arm. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I don't know how to be this person. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. You already are, he said. You just have to believe it. Mark's visit shook me more than I wanted to admit. For days, I replayed his words, the disgust in his voice. I avoided Alex, texting him excuses about work. But the truth was, I was scared. Scared of losing my family. Scared of what it meant to love someone like Alex. Scared of who I was becoming. Jamie called me out on it. We were at a diner, the kind with sticky tables and bottomless coffee. You're ghosting him, Ethan, they said, their voice sharp. That's not fair. Not to him, and not to you. I'm not ghosting, I lied, stirring my coffee. I just need time. Time for what? To decide if you're brave enough to be yourself. Jamie's eyes were fierce, but their voice softened. I've been where you are. It's hard. But hiding doesn't make it easier. I knew they were right, but the fear was paralyzing. I'd grown up in a world where love had rules, and I was breaking every one of them. Still, I couldn't shake the memory of Alex's kiss, the way it had felt like coming home. I finally texted him, asking to meet at his studio. When I got there, he was painting, his hands streaked with blue. The canvas was a storm of colors, chaotic and beautiful, just like him. He looked up, and I saw the hurt in his eyes. I'm sorry, I said, the words spilling out. I freaked out. My family, they're making this harder than I thought. He set down his brush, his expression guarded. I get it, Ethan. I've been through this. But I can't be your secret. I won't. I don't want you to be, I said, stepping closer. I need to figure out how to do this without losing everything. He sighed, running a hand through his curls. You might lose some things. That's the deal. But you'll gain more than you can imagine. We talked for hours, the studio filled with the scent of paint and possibility. He told me about Ryan again, how losing him had nearly destroyed him, but how he'd rebuilt himself with the help of his chosen family. They showed me I was worth loving, he said. And you are too. His words broke something open in me. I'd been so focused on what I might lose that I hadn't seen what I'd already gained: a community, a love, a truth I couldn't unlearn. I kissed him then, harder than before, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. But the world outside wasn't done testing me. A week later, I got an email from my mom. It was long, formal, and cold. She and Dad wanted me to come home for a talk. I knew what that meant: an intervention, a chance to fix me. I showed the email to Alex, expecting him to tell me not to go. Instead, he said, "You should go. Not for them, for you. You need to face this." I didn't want to, but I knew he was right. So I booked a flight to my hometown, my stomach in knots. The night before I left, Alex gave me a small painting, a tiny canvas with two figures holding hands under a starry sky. For courage, he said. I held onto that painting like a lifeline as I walked into my parents' house. They were waiting in the living room, their faces stern. Mark was there too, his arms crossed. The air was thick with tension, and I knew this was the moment that would define everything. The living room felt smaller than I remembered, the walls closing in as my parents stared at me. My mom's eyes were red, like she'd been crying, but her voice was steady. Ethan, we're worried about you, she said. This lifestyle you're choosing, it's not who you are. I gripped the edge of the couch, Alex's painting tucked in my bag at my feet. It's not a lifestyle, Mom. It's who I am. I'm in love with Alex, and I'm not going to apologize for that. My dad's face hardened. You're throwing away your future for some phase. You think this is what God wants. I flinched, the old guilt creeping in. Growing up, church had been our cornerstone, and I'd never questioned its teachings. Now, I saw them for what they were, rules written by people, not truths carved in stone. I don't know what God wants, I said, my voice shaking. But I know this feels right. Mark snorted. Right. You're confused, Ethan. You've let these people brainwash you. These people? I snapped, my anger boiling over. They're my family too. They've shown me more love and acceptance than you ever have. The room went silent. My mom started to cry, and my dad looked away. I hated hurting them, but I couldn't keep pretending to be someone I wasn't. I'm not asking for your permission, I said. I'm telling you who I am. You can accept it or not, but I'm done hiding. I left that night, my heart heavy but lighter than it had been in years. When I got back to Seattle, Alex was waiting at the airport. He didn't say anything, just pulled me into a hug, and I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. The next rainbow reunion was different. I wasn't just a guest anymore, I was part of it. I helped Carla set up tables, laughed with Leo over bad puns, and danced with Alex under the string lights. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. But there was still one thing I needed to do. I'd been carrying Alex's painting with me everywhere, a reminder of his belief in me. Now, I wanted to give him something back. I wasn't an artist, but I'd been writing, pouring my thoughts into a journal, trying to make sense of this journey. I decided to turn it into a letter, something to show him what he meant to me. I spent days on it, writing and rewriting, trying to capture the way he'd changed my life. When I finally gave it to him, we were sitting by the waterfront, the same place where we'd first kissed. He read it in silence, his eyes moving over the words. And when he looked up, they were wet. Ethan, he said, his voice thick. This is everything. I took his hand, my heart full. You're everything, I said. And I meant it. The letter was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Alex and I grew closer, our lives intertwining in ways I hadn't imagined. We moved in together, turning his tiny apartment into our home. My journals became our shared story, pages filled with moments of joy and struggle. But life wasn't perfect. My parents stopped calling, and Mark blocked my number. The loss stung, but I found solace in my chosen family. Carla invited us over for Sunday dinners, and Leo became my go-to for bad movie nights. Jamie, of course, was there through it all, their teasing a constant reminder that I was never alone. One night, at another rainbow reunion, I stood up during the storytelling circle. My hands were shaking, but I needed to share. I was scared when I first came here, I said, my voice carrying over the crackling fire. I thought I didn't belong. But you all showed me what family really means. And Alex, I looked at him, his eyes shining in the firelight. You showed me how to love myself. The crowd cheered, and Alex pulled me into a kiss, the kind that made the world disappear. Later, as we lay in bed, he whispered, "I'm proud of you." I smiled, my heart full. I'm proud of us. But the past wasn't done with me. One day, I got a letter from my mom, not an email, but a handwritten note. It was short, just a few lines, but it was enough. "We're trying to understand," she wrote. "We love you, Ethan. Always will." It wasn't acceptance, not fully, but it was a start. I showed it to Alex, and he squeezed my hand. "Give them time," he said. "Love has a way of breaking through." I started volunteering at the youth center, helping kids who were struggling with their identities. Their stories reminded me of my own, and I realized how far I'd come. I wasn't just Ethan, the straight guy from a small town. I was Ethan, the man who loved Alex, who'd found a family that saw him for who he was. One evening, as we walked through the city, Alex stopped and turned to me. "You changed my life too. You know," he said. "I thought I'd never love again after Ryan. But you made me believe in second chances." I kissed him, right there on the street, not caring who saw. For the first time, I felt free. Years later, the rainbow reunion was still a highlight of my life. Alex and I were married now, our wedding a chaotic, joyful affair with Jamie as our officiant and Carla crying in the front row. My parents didn't come, but they sent a card, and I held on to that small gesture like a promise. We'd built a life together, one filled with art, love, and the kind of family you choose. The youth center had become a second home, where we mentored kids who reminded us of ourselves, scared, hopeful, searching for truth. I'd started painting too, nowhere near Alex's level, but he hung my clumsy canvases next to his, calling them masterpieces. One night, at the reunion, I stood with Alex by the fire pit, watching the next generation share their stories. A teenager named Riley spoke about coming out to their parents, their voice trembling but strong. I felt Alex's hand in mine, and I knew we'd helped make this moment possible. As the fire crackled, I thought back to that first night, when I'd stood at the gate, terrified and unsure. I'd walked into a world I didn't understand, and it had changed me forever. Not just because of Alex, though he was the heart of it, but because of the truth I'd found, the truth that love doesn't follow rules. That family isn't just blood. That courage means choosing yourself, even when it's hard. I looked at Alex, his face glowing in the firelight, and I knew I'd do it all again. Every doubt, every fight, every tear. Because this life, this love, this family was worth it. And as the stars came out above us, I realized something else. I wasn't just a guest at the rainbow reunion anymore. I was home,